The emergency alarm blared through the massive coalition headquarters as Admiral Vextar's 6 eyes focused on the holographic star map floating before him. Red marks indicated dead zones where entire solar systems had simply vanished into nothingness. His clawed hands shook as he counted them again. 4 systems in 1 month. Billions of lives erased without a trace. Around the circular chamber, representatives from over 1,000 alien species whispered in fear. The crystalline beings from Sector 7 clicked nervously. The gas-form entities from the outer rim pulsed with anxious energy. Even the mighty Titanards, who stood 12 feet tall and could crush steel with their bare hands, looked terrified. "Show us the recordings again," demanded Counselor Zix, her blue skin turning pale as she spoke. The hologram shifted to display the final moments of the Kepler colony. 30 million beings lived on that world just yesterday. The recording showed a massive shadow passing over their sun, and then, nothing. The entire system simply stopped existing. No explosion, no debris, no evidence that anything had ever been there. "The ancient texts were right," whispered the Zephyrian delegate, his snake-like tongue flicking nervously. "The Void Dragon has awakened. Our greatest battleships mean nothing to it. Our most powerful weapons cannot even scratch its hide." Admiral Vextar had commanded fleets for over 2 centuries. He had won wars against impossible odds. But this creature made him feel like a helpless child. The dragon was older than recorded history, more powerful than their entire combined military, and it seemed to be playing with them like a cat toys with mice. "There is one option," the Zephyrian continued, pulling out an ancient datapad covered in symbols that hurt to look at. "The old writings speak of sacrifice. Pure blood offered willingly. It might appease the beast." The chamber fell silent. Every species had tried to fight the dragon and failed miserably. Their most advanced ships had been swatted aside like insects. Perhaps their ancestors knew something they had forgotten. All attention turned to the human section of the chamber. Ambassador Williams stood alone, representing the youngest and weakest species in the coalition. Earth had only joined 50 years ago, and most aliens still saw humans as primitive creatures barely worth noticing. Williams was a tough old soldier who had seen plenty of wars, but his weathered face showed the weight of what was being asked. His gray hair was perfectly combed, and his simple blue uniform looked plain next to the exotic clothing of the other delegates. "You want us to sacrifice one of our people," Williams said, his voice steady despite the impossible request. "The dragon has ignored your world completely," Admiral Vextar replied. "Every other species has lost someone to its hunger. But Earth remains untouched. Perhaps it will accept what you offer." The logic was cold but undeniable. Humans were the only species the dragon had not attacked. Maybe that meant something. Maybe it would listen to them. Williams closed his eyes for a long moment, thinking of the billions of lives hanging in the balance. "If we do this, you'll guarantee us protection." "You have our word," the Admiral replied. "The entire coalition will defend your world." Meanwhile, on Earth, 16-year-old Jake Thompson sat in the common room of St. Mary's Orphanage, completely unaware that his name was being discussed in government facilities around the planet. He was reading an old science fiction book, dreaming of adventures among the stars, not knowing that his own adventure was about to begin. Jake had lived at the orphanage since he was 5 years old. His parents had died in a car accident, leaving him with no family and no inheritance. The government files described him as having no political connections, no influential relatives, and no strategic value. In their cold calculation, this made him the perfect candidate. The selection process took less than an hour. Government officials arrived at the orphanage in black vehicles, showing official papers to the confused staff. Jake was told he had been chosen for a special space program, and would be leaving immediately. As the sleek silver spacecraft prepared for launch, Jake found himself alone in a small passenger compartment. The walls were covered with strange symbols, and everything looked far more advanced than anything he had seen on Earth. Fear and excitement battled in his chest as the engines hummed to life. That's when he noticed the small datapad wedged between the seat cushions. His curious fingers pulled it free, and the screen immediately lit up with files marked Top Secret. His heart raced as he saw folder names like Project Genesis and Dragon Human Protocols. The documents inside spoke of humanity's real history. They mentioned ancient connections to creatures beyond the stars, of bonds that existed before human civilization began. Jake's hands trembled as he read about genetic markers in human DNA that matched patterns found in dragon fossils scattered across the galaxy. The ship's autopilot engaged with a soft chime, and Jake felt the vessel accelerate beyond Earth's atmosphere. Through the small window, he watched his home planet shrink away, knowing that everyone believed he was flying toward his death. But the mysterious file suggested something entirely different was waiting for him among the stars. Jake's small spacecraft began to shake violently as it approached what looked like empty space. But something was wrong with the darkness ahead. It seemed to shimmer and twist, like looking at water through a broken mirror. The ship's instruments went crazy, displaying readings that made no sense at all. Suddenly, the vessel punched through what felt like a soap bubble made of reality itself. Jake's stomach lurched as everything around him changed. The normal black of space was replaced by something that hurt his eyes to look at directly. Colors that had no names swirled in impossible patterns. Distance meant nothing here. Up and down were just suggestions. And there, floating in the center of this twisted realm, was the creature that had terrified an entire galaxy. Jake's breath caught in his throat. The dragon was massive beyond comprehension. Its body stretched for miles in every direction, covered in scales that seemed to contain entire universes. Each scale held the faint glow of dying stars, twinkling like diamonds against the cosmic darkness. The creature's wings were folded against its body, but Jake could tell they would blot out suns when spread wide. But it was the dragon's eyes that stopped Jake's heart. They were ancient beyond measure, filled with the weight of countless centuries. When those eyes fixed on him, Jake felt like he was being examined by something that had watched galaxies being born and die. The dragon's head was larger than Jake's entire orphanage back on Earth. Its teeth were like crystalline spears, each one capable of slicing through battleships. Yet as terrifying as the creature appeared, Jake found himself not running in fear. Instead, something deep inside his chest began to warm, like a fire being kindled after years of cold darkness. Then the dragon spoke, but not with its mouth. The voice came from inside Jake's own mind, resonating through his bones and making his teeth ache. It was a voice older than human civilization, deeper than ocean trenches, and somehow achingly familiar. "Young prince," the voice said, and Jake stumbled backward in pure shock. He had expected roaring, or threats, or demands for his death. He had not expected to be called a prince by the most feared creature in known space. Jake's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. His hands shook as he tried to process what was happening. This was supposed to be his execution. He was meant to die here, alone in the void, buying time for the rest of the galaxy with his blood. "I don't understand," Jake finally managed to whisper, his voice barely audible even in the perfect silence of the dragon's realm. The massive head tilted slightly, studying him with those impossibly ancient eyes. When the dragon moved, reality bent around it like a sheet being pulled tight. Jake could feel the creature's attention like warm sunlight on his face. "Of course you do not understand, child," the dragon replied, its mental voice gentle now, almost sad. "Your people have forgotten what they truly are. The knowledge was buried deep, hidden even from yourselves, waiting for the proper time to emerge." Jake felt his knees wobble as the dragon's head descended until it was level with him. This close, he could see his own reflection in those cosmic eyes. But something was different about his reflection. It seemed to glow with its own inner light. "Tell me," the dragon continued, "have you never wondered why your species is so different? Why humans can adapt to any environment, survive in conditions that would kill other races, dream of stars they have never seen?" Jake thought about all the stories he had read, all the dreams of space and adventure that had filled his childhood. Even as a small boy, he had always felt like Earth was too small for him, like he belonged somewhere among the distant stars. "You were not born of natural evolution like the others," the dragon explained, and Jake felt something fundamental shift in his understanding of the world. The crystalline beings evolved in caves of living crystal. The titanoids grew strong on high-gravity worlds. The gas forms learned to dance between the atoms of nebulae. But humans were crafted by hands that shaped reality itself. The warmth in Jake's chest grew stronger, spreading through his arms and legs like liquid fire. It did not hurt, but it changed him somehow. He could feel new pathways opening in his mind, connections forming that had never existed before. "The first makers," the dragon continued, "created you as our companions. Not as servants or slaves, but as partners in maintaining the balance of all existence. Your planet was hidden away, your true nature suppressed, because you were not yet ready for the responsibility that awaited you." Jake looked down at his hands and gasped. They were glowing with the same starlight he saw in the dragon's scales. The light pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat, growing brighter with each passing moment. "But now," the dragon said, and Jake could hear something like joy in that ancient voice, "the time of hiding is over. The galaxy faces a threat that only the union of dragon and human can overcome. You are not here to die, young prince. You are here to remember who you were always meant to be." Without warning, Jake felt his feet leave the solid floor of his spacecraft. One moment he was standing in the passenger compartment, the next he was floating freely in the twisted space of the dragon's realm. Panic shot through him as he realized he was no longer protected by the ship's life support systems. He should have been dead instantly. The vacuum of space should have boiled his blood and frozen his lungs solid. But instead, Jake found himself breathing normally, as if the cosmic radiation and freezing void were no more dangerous than a cool breeze on a summer day. How is this possible? Jake gasped, watching his breath form visible clouds in the impossible air that surrounded him. The dragon's massive eye focused on him with what might have been approval. Your body remembers what your mind has forgotten, young prince. The first makers designed you to survive in the void between worlds. What seems like death to other species is merely another environment for humans to master. Jake looked down at his hands again. The starlight glow had grown stronger, creating a soft bubble of warmth around his entire body. He could feel energy flowing through him, but it was not his own energy. It was something far older and more powerful, something that had been sleeping in his blood for 16 years. Now we begin your true education, the dragon said, and suddenly the space around them filled with floating chunks of rock and ice. Jake watched in fascination as dozens of asteroids drifted past him, some as large as buildings, others no bigger than cars. They moved in complex patterns, spinning and tumbling through the void like a deadly dance. The dragon's voice echoed in his mind again. Tell me when the largest one will shatter. Jake stared at the massive asteroid, trying to understand what the dragon meant. It looked solid enough, dark gray rock marked with craters and scars from countless impacts. But as he focused on it, something strange began to happen. He could see tiny cracks spreading across its surface, stress fractures that had not been visible moments before. Now, Jake said, surprising himself with his certainty. The instant the word left his lips, the asteroid exploded into a million pieces. The fragments spread outward in a perfect sphere of debris, each piece following trajectories that Jake somehow knew with absolute precision. Your people call it intuition or gut feeling, the dragon explained as Jake stared in amazement at the floating wreckage. In truth, you are seeing the underlying structure of reality itself. Every particle, every force, every possibility exists in patterns that human consciousness can read like words on a page. Days began to blur together, though Jake slowly realized that time worked differently in the dragon's realm. Sometimes hours would pass in what felt like minutes. Other times, a single moment would stretch out for what seemed like days. The dragon explained that time was just another dimension that humans could learn to navigate. Jake's abilities grew stronger with each passing trial. He learned to survive in temperatures that would turn steel into liquid metal. When the dragon created walls of flame around him, Jake walked through them without his clothes even getting singed. When crushing pressure tried to squeeze the life from his body, he simply adjusted his internal structure and continued breathing normally. But the most incredible discovery came when Jake realized he could reach out with his thoughts and touch other minds across vast distances. At first it was just a whisper, a faint sense of other people thinking and feeling somewhere far away. But with practice, he could focus on specific individuals and hear their thoughts as clearly as if they were standing next to him. I can feel them, Jake said during one of his rest periods, floating cross-legged in the void while cosmic energy swirled around him like a gentle storm. Other humans. They are starting to wake up too, aren't they? The dragon's ancient eyes held depths of sadness that made Jake's heart ache. Yes, young prince. The awakening spreads across your entire species now. But it may already be too late. Jake felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold of space. Too late for what? We are not the destroyers your galaxy fears, the dragon said, its mental voice heavy with centuries of burden. We are the guardians, the last line of defense against something far more terrible than you can imagine. And we are losing the war. The truth hit Jake like a physical blow to his chest. All this time, the coalition had been fighting the wrong enemy. The dragons were not attacking star systems for conquest or hunger. They were running from something that made them look weak by comparison. The silent devourer, the dragon whispered, and Jake felt reality itself seemed to shudder at the name. It is not alive, not in any way you could understand life. It is the opposite of existence itself. Where it passes, not only do planets and stars cease to exist, but the very concept that they ever existed is erased from the universe. Jake's newly awakened mind struggled to comprehend such complete destruction. How do you fight something like that? You cannot fight it, the dragon replied. You can only hold it back, delay its advance, buy time for new solutions to emerge. We have been fighting this holding action for longer than your species has existed. But our numbers grow fewer with each battle, and the devour grows stronger. Jake felt his awakening ability surge with sudden, fierce purpose. The warmth in his chest became a burning fire of determination. "What do you need me to do?" The dragon's massive head moved closer, and Jake could see his own reflection in those cosmic eyes. But now his reflection looked different. It looked like someone ready to face the impossible and win. "Help me wake your people, young prince. Help me forge the bond that was always meant to exist between dragon and human. Together, we might find a way to push back the darkness and save not just this galaxy, but all of existence itself." Jake felt the dragon's massive consciousness merge with his own, and suddenly his mind was flooded with images that made his soul scream in terror. He saw the silent devour for the first time, and immediately understood why even the mighty dragons fled before it. It was not a creature or a force in any way that made sense. The silent devour was the opposite of existence itself, a creeping nothing that consumed everything it touched. But what made it truly horrifying was that it did not just destroy things. It erased them so completely that the universe forgot they had ever existed at all. Jake watched through the dragon's memories as entire star clusters simply stopped being. Not exploded, not consumed, but deleted from reality as if they had never been there in the first place. The space they left behind was not even empty space. It was a void so complete that even the concept of emptiness was too complex to survive there. "Do you understand now?" the dragon asked, its mental voice heavy with the weight of eons spent fighting an impossible war. "When the devour passes through a region, it leaves behind areas where the laws of physics themselves cannot exist. Even mathematics breaks down at the edges of those dead zones." Jake felt his newly awakened mind struggle to process the scope of the threat. "How long has it been coming?" "Since before your son was born," the dragon replied. "We have been fighting a delaying action for millions of years, using our abilities to reinforce the quantum foundations of reality itself. Every time the devourer advances, we push back, strengthening the barriers that hold existence together." Through their shared consciousness, Jake saw fleets of dragons working in perfect coordination. They did not fight with weapons or ships, but with their very essence, pouring their life force into maintaining the structure of space and time. It was beautiful and heartbreaking to watch these ancient beings sacrifice themselves to hold back the ultimate darkness. But something was wrong with the recent battles. The barriers were failing faster than ever before, and the dragons looked exhausted in ways that went deeper than physical tiredness. The coalition's attacks, Jake realized with growing horror. When they shoot at you with their energy weapons, they disrupt the quantum fields we use to maintain reality stability, the dragon confirmed. Every blast from their ships creates tiny fractures in the foundations of existence. The devour feeds on those fractures, growing stronger with each wound the coalition inflicts on us. Jake saw it all now with perfect, terrible clarity. The galaxy's greatest military forces had been unknowingly helping their own destruction. Every successful attack on a dragon made the silent devour more powerful and brought the end of everything one step closer. "My people," Jake whispered, thinking of Earth and all the humans who had no idea what was coming. "They don't know any of this." But even as he spoke, Jake's enhanced awareness began picking up something incredible. Across the vast distances of space, he could sense other human minds awakening to the same cosmic consciousness he had discovered. The warmth in his chest resonated with hundreds, then thousands, then millions of similar flames being kindled throughout the galaxy. "The awakening spreads faster now," the dragon said with something that might have been hope in its ancient voice. "Your Admiral Kate Sullivan has been preparing for this moment her entire life, though she did not know it until today." Jake reached out with his thoughts, following the familiar mental signature of human consciousness back toward Earth. What he found there made his breath catch in his throat. Hidden beneath the surface of Earth's oceans, massive shipyards were rising from the depths. Vessels unlike anything the Coalition had ever seen were emerging from their concealment, their hulls inscribed with symbols that hurt alien minds to perceive. These were not ships built with normal technology. They existed partially outside the regular dimensions of space and time, crewed by humans whose consciousness could navigate realms that other species could not even imagine. Admiral Sullivan stood on the bridge of the largest vessel, her mind blazing with the same cosmic fire that now burned in Jake's chest. "She remembers now," the dragon said. "The memories that were locked away for safety are returning to all your people. Earth was never the primitive world it appeared to be. Your planet was hidden, your true nature suppressed, while you developed the abilities necessary to face this ultimate threat." Jake could see the truth spreading through his species like wildfire. Human scientists were suddenly understanding principles of physics that had been beyond them moments before. Human engineers were building devices that should have been impossible. Human pilots were learning to fly ships that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. But most importantly, humans everywhere were discovering they could do what no other species in the galaxy could accomplish. They could think in the spaces between thoughts, exist in the gaps between dimensions, and maintain their consciousness even when reality itself began to break down around them. The silent devourer erases thoughts along with matter, the dragon explained. But human consciousness was designed to exist partially outside normal spacetime. You can continue to think and act even in areas where the concept of existence has been deleted. Jake felt the weight of destiny settling on his shoulders like a cloak made of starlight. His people were not just another species joining the galactic community. They were the key to survival itself, the only force capable of pushing back the ultimate darkness. "We have to go back," Jake said, his voice ringing with newfound authority. "We have to unite the coalition and prepare for what's coming. The dragons and humans together, we might actually have a chance." The dragon's massive form began to shift and change, starlight dancing across its scales like aurora in the solar wind. "Yes, young prince. The time of hiding is over. It is time for humanity to claim its birthright as guardians of existence itself." Jake felt the dragon's realm begin to dissolve around them as they prepared to return to normal space. But now he was not the frightened boy who had been sent here to die. He was something entirely new, a bridge between two ancient species, carrying the hopes of an entire galaxy on his shoulders. The real battle was about to begin. The coalition fleet hung motionless in space, their weapons trained on empty void where the dragon had vanished with their sacrifice. Admiral Vextar paced the bridge of his flagship, his 6 eyes scanning the sensor displays for any sign of the creature's return. 3 days had passed since the human boy had been delivered to the beast, and the silence was making everyone nervous. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "we're detecting massive energy signatures approaching from the outer system." Vextar rushed to the main display, expecting to see the dragon returning for another attack. Instead, his heart nearly stopped as space itself seemed to tear open like fabric. Through the dimensional rift came Jake, but he was no longer the frightened boy they had sent to die. He rode alongside the massive dragon as if they were old friends, starlight playing across his skin like living armor. Behind them, reality continued to split and fold as hundreds of ships began materializing from what looked like empty space. These were not crude human vessels cobbled together from salvaged alien technology. These were ships that hurt to look at directly, their hulls inscribed with symbols that made alien minds ache just from glimpsing them. The largest vessel was easily the size of a coalition dreadnought, but its design followed principles that seemed to mock the laws of physics. Parts of it existed in dimensions that normal eyes could not perceive, creating an optical illusion that made the ship appear to be several different sizes simultaneously. "This is Admiral Kate Sullivan of the Earth Defense Force," a crisp female voice cut through every communication channel in the fleet. The transmission carried an authority that made even the proudest alien commanders pay attention. "We are humanity, children of the first makers, and we have come to fulfill our purpose." Admiral Vextar's claws scraped against the metal deck as he struggled to process what he was seeing. The primitive species that barely qualified for coalition membership was revealing a hidden fleet more advanced than anything in known space. Through the viewports, coalition forces watched in stunned amazement as human crews demonstrated abilities that shattered their understanding of reality itself. Captain Ben Rodriguez piloted his vessel through a series of maneuvers that should have been impossible, folding space around his ship and appearing in 3 different locations at the same time. Commander Amy Parker's voice echoed across the battlefield as she synchronized her entire crew's consciousness into a single unified mind. Her weapons fired bursts of energy that existed across multiple dimensions simultaneously, hitting targets that were not even visible to normal senses. But it was Jake who drew the most attention. The 16-year-old boy who had been sent to die now floated in open space without any protective suit, his bond with the ancient dragon allowing them to move as a single entity. Where Jake's human adaptability met the dragon's cosmic power, something entirely new was born. That's when the silent devourer finally arrived. The edge of the star system simply stopped existing. Not destroyed or consumed, but deleted from reality as if it had never been there at all. The void left behind was so complete that even the concept of emptiness was too complex to survive in those dead zones. Coalition ships that got too close to the expanding nothingness had their crews simply cease to think. One moment the alien soldiers were screaming in terror, the next they stood motionless as their consciousness was erased from existence. Even their memories of ever having thoughts disappeared into the hungry void. But the humans were different. As the silent devourer washed over the Earth Defense Force ships, their crews continued to function normally. They thought in the spaces between thoughts, existed in the gaps between dimensions, and maintained their awareness even when reality itself began breaking down around them. Jake led the counterattack with his dragon partner, their combined consciousness reaching into realms that other species could not even imagine. They did not fight the silent devourer with weapons or energy blasts, but with pure existence itself, pouring their life force into reinforcing the quantum foundations that held the universe together. Admiral Sullivan coordinated the human fleet with impossible precision, her ships weaving patterns through space-time that created barriers of reinforced reality. Each vessel contributed its crew's consciousness to a growing network of human awareness that pushed back against the advancing nothingness. The battle lasted for hours, though time itself became fluid and uncertain as the fabric of existence stretched and warped around the combatants. Coalition forces could only watch in awe as humanity revealed its true purpose, not as conquerors seeking power, but as guardians fighting to preserve the very possibility of thought and life. Slowly, impossibly, the silent devourer began to retreat. It was not defeated in any conventional sense, but the combined will of dragons and humans had created barriers too strong for it to easily overcome. The advancing void slowed, stopped, and finally began to withdraw into the deep darkness between galaxies. As the immediate threat faded, Jake floated before the assembled coalition fleet, still glowing with starlight, still bonded to his ancient dragon partner. His voice carried across 1,000 ships as he addressed the galaxy's representatives. "For millions of years, you have fought each other over resources and territory," Jake said, his words reaching every mind in the fleet simultaneously. "You never understood that we are all part of something far greater than any single species or world." The dragon's massive head moved beside him, its ancient eyes reflecting the light of distant stars. The first makers created both dragon and human to guard the boundaries of existence itself. "We are the inheritors of the cosmic order, the ones chosen to stand between life and the ultimate darkness." Around them, Earth's hidden fleet maintained their protective formations as more human consciousness awakened across the galaxy. On distant worlds, human colonists were discovering abilities they never knew they possessed. In research stations and exploration ships, human minds were expanding to touch dimensions that had been beyond their reach just days before. "The age of hiding is over," Jake announced, his voice carrying the weight of destiny and the promise of hope. "Humanity has awakened to its true purpose. We will stand with all species who choose to defend the light of consciousness against the forces of absolute nothingness." Admiral Vextar found his voice at last, speaking for the stunned coalition fleet. "What do you need from us?" Jake smiled, and for a moment he looked like the 16-year-old boy he still was, despite everything that had changed. "Help us build something new. Not just an alliance of convenience, but a true partnership between all thinking beings. Together, we can push back the darkness and ensure that consciousness continues to shine throughout the cosmos." The dragon's mental voice reached every mind in the fleet, alien and human alike. "The real work begins now."